200 millimeters per second. I was given an intravenous beta blocker to slow down my heart to reduce image blur. A nitroglycerine tablet was also placed under my tongue to dilate my chest arteries so the scan could visualize them better. After a couple of preliminary images, a nurse injected X-ray opaque dye into my vein. "You're going to feel warm all over," she said as I blushed, thinking I had wet myself. The final run-through took less than a minute. After Dr. Trost reviewed the images, she called me into the reading room. The grey and white pictures were up on a large monitor. White specks, radiographic grit, were in all three of my coronary vessels. The main artery feeding my heart had a 30 to 50% obstruction near the opening and a 50% blockage in the mid-portion. There was minor plaque in the other two arteries too. Sitting numbly in that dark room, I felt as if I were getting a glimpse of how I was probably going to die. Introduction. The engine of life. There is nothing shameful about a heart attack. Susan Sontag, Illness as Metaphor, 1978. Perhaps the most consequential event in my life occurred 15 years before I was born. On a sweltering July day in India in 1953, my paternal grandfather died suddenly. He was only 57. The circumstances were unusual, and like most family tragedies, ours has acquired a touch of myth. Everyone agrees that in the morning on the day he died, my grandfather was bitten by a snake coiled between sacks of grain in his little shop in Kanpur. He did not see the type of serpent, but snakebite is common in India. And by all accounts, my grandfather was feeling fine when he came back home for lunch. My father, who was almost 14, was going for an interview at Kanpur Agricultural College the following day, and my grandfather had planned to accompany him. They were sitting on the stone floor, inspecting my father's high school diploma, delighting in all the academic honors he'd received, when midway through the meal, neighbors brought in the corpse of the shiny black cobra they claimed had bitten my grandfather. It had been killed by a snake charmer summoned to the shop. My grandfather took one look at it and went pale. "How can I survive this?" he said, before slumping to the floor. The neighbors exhorted him to say Ram, Ram, a Hindu prayer, but his last words, lying on the floor, his eyes turning to glass, were, "I wanted to take Prem to college." A government ambulance used to make rounds in the village regularly. Around 7 p.m., several hours after my grandfather's collapse, it was flagged down on a routine drive. By then, rigor mortis had set in, traveling like a slow wave from my grandfather's neck and jaw into his limbs. The paramedics immediately declared my grandfather had passed. He had no heartbeat, but the family, in denial, insisted they take him and the snake to a British-built hospital about 5 miles away. A doctor there pronounced my grandfather dead on arrival. "It was a heart attack," the doctor said, dispelling the family's belief that a snake had killed their elder. My grandfather had succumbed to the most common cause of death throughout the world, sudden cardiac death after a myocardial infarction or heart attack, perhaps triggered in his case by fright over the snakebite. With nothing to be done and the summer heat threatening to spoil the body, my grandfather was brought back to the village and cremated the following day. Before a garlanded casket set on a pyre soaked in oil, people beat their heads in grief under a light blue sky. Listening to family law, I grew up with a fear of the heart as the executioner of men in the prime of their lives. Because of the heart, you could be healthy and still die. It seemed like such a cheat. The apprehension was fed by our grandmother, who came to live with us in California in the early 1980s, until she got homesick and returned to the tiny village in Kanpur where her beloved husband had died. Even 30 years after his death, she still wrapped herself in white gossamer shawls that smelled of mothballs, befitting a widow.